Well, hello everyone and welcome to yet another Discussions with Dolf, and I'm coming to you today from the heart of Hanoi in Vietnam. And what you see behind me is a scene of seeming relentless craziness. It's a cacophony of sound, and what you've actually got is an intersection here behind me where there are no traffic lights, and there's obviously a lot of traffic. There's pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, motorbike traffic and car traffic. And the really interesting thing I find about this scenario is that without any rules and regulations, like when the light is red you stop and when it's green you go, and even then some people try and break the rules, I guess, but there's no rule here. There's no police officer on the corner. They never seem to stop. They all keep moving, and the interesting thing is there never seems to be an accident. I've seen one accident in all my time here in Vietnam, and it seems to be a very minor thing where two cars sort of touched each other. There was no shouting and screaming and fist fighting and road rage. They just accepted that it happened. But even as I'm looking at the screen while I'm recording this, I can see the motorbikes coming from two angles, 90 degrees apart from each other, and they interweave and intertwine, and they're all very friendly about it. And when you first come here, you think, oh my gosh, this is an accident just waiting to happen. And you sort of cringe as you wait for the collisions to occur everywhere you look. But then you start to get used to it and you realize that it's a different psyche. And in fact, crossing the road here is an exercise in education, I guess, because back home, wherever home may be for us in the West, we wouldn't consider stepping out onto the road until the traffic is clear. And in fact, in the United States, often when you think that you might be stepping out onto the road, cars stop because they fear litigation, so they don't want to hit you. But here there's traffic going, and you have to learn from the locals just by observing what they do. If you hesitate and wait until there's a break in traffic, you could be waiting for an awfully long time. So what they do is they know that the motorbikes and the cars will actually go either side of you. So if you're walking forward and they think they're going to hit you by going in front of you, they'll go behind you. And it's sort of like breaking a path in the traffic that happens. And it takes a bit of courage that you have to pluck up from somewhere to do this. But your first job stepping the road, the first time you do it, is you build up all this courage, and then you step out and you time it, and then indeed the traffic flows in front or behind you, and it's like you've parted the waters in some great Red Sea, and you make your way across. So it's not only interesting to see, but it's a very useful way of getting across. But as you can see behind me, and I know a sample size of a few minutes won't be good for anything, but I think it's almost a lesson in Adam Smith's ideas of laissez-faire, where the more you regulate, the more complex society becomes, and then you need litigation laws that will counter people who inadvertently break the rule and get into trouble. Another example that I won't show you in this video clip is back home in the West, wherever that is. If there's a roadwork and there's a hole in the sidewalk or the footpath, they have signs around it and they string it off with reflective ropes and they put flashing lights on it so that at night you can see it. Whereas here you're just as likely to have a hole in the footpath while they're fixing something, and there's no warning at all. If you're silly enough to step in it and you break a bone or your neck or something, it's on you. You should have watched where you're going. Now, I don't completely endorse this, but here's the interesting thing. No one seems to step in these holes. Whereas we've all heard stories and seen the video footage of people back home who practice falling, and they fall against something where they believe they can have a lawsuit. They litigate because it wasn't properly signposted or whatever. So there are pros and cons of each system, and I'm not for a moment suggesting that we remove all warning signs when there's a hole in the road. Of course not. But it just goes to show that sometimes this does work. And I do wonder whether, when it comes to real estate, whether we are over-regulated, whereas the natural market forces of supply and demand would kind of fix things. And you can see that every square inch of commercial space here is utilized to do some commercial activity. They have hotels and restaurants and coffee bars. Oh my gosh, talk about coffee bars. I've never seen as many coffee bars anywhere in the world as I have here in Hanoi. And since I'm an aficionado of coffee, I kind of enjoy that aspect of it. But anyway, it's all utilized, and I wonder whether or not there are regulations here. And sometimes to get something done back home, it takes months and months of submitting forms and getting permission from here and architect's drawings, and then they want renderings, and then they want a quantity surveillance done to figure out if it's going to cost within the budget, and on and on and on it goes. And in the meantime, you're missing out on business. Whereas, as you can see, this is a hive of activity. I'm not immigrating here yet, so I'm not saying it's so much better, so we don't need comments like that. But you do wonder, when you travel around and see all these different nuances of human nature, what are the best elements that we can pick from each and consolidate and bring them back home. And I do wonder whether we're over-regulated, and I subscribe to this view that sometimes, just sometimes, maybe less is more. Folks, that's all we've got time for. Until next week, as always, successful investing. Thank you very much.